Hello Dragon Ball Super players. I'm Legends Michael Carrick of Team Foe x PPG, and I'm here to bring you my second place Invoker decklist from this past weekend's G-Series inaugural event. At the end of this video, I'll be covering some deck changes I'll be looking forward to trying out on the eve of the next errata list going into effect on the 6th of August this year. Before I go into my video though, I'd like to give a shout out to Elmo Gonzalez for putting together such a terrific event, and I absolutely cannot wait to compete in the rest of the tournaments in his new G-Series. For this event, I placed second coming out of Swiss, losing only to rebooted Mecha Frieza versus Justin Rios, and eventually placed second overall, losing to Rios again in the finals. My matchups this event were Cell Surge Hand Control, Set 13 Mechicabra, rebooted Mecha Frieza, Dark Broly again, and then rebooted Mecha Frieza for the last round. Once in Top Cut, I face off versus rebooted Mecha Frieza, Dark Broly, Blue Yellow Soul Striker, and finally rebooted Mecha Frieza again. Let's dive right into this deck list. So, as most people know by now, I piloted Son Goku from set 9, and the backside would be Son Goku Limit Surpassed, or Ultra Instinct Son Goku Limit Surpassed. Son Goku on the front side, for people who aren't aware yet, he is a Saiyan and a Universe 7 leader, which is relevant. He has his Activate Battle. When this card is in battle, choose one extra card in your hand and place it in your drop area. Then choose up to one of your life, add it to your hand, draw a card. Then this card gets 5k power for the rest of this battle, and you negate the skill for that battle. This is really cool because it turns all of your extra cards into a cycle and give this leader 5k power. He has a cool Awaken Surge ability which says choose one red card and one blue card in your hand and place them under this leader. And then you may draw 3 cards, choose up to one of your energy, switch it to active mode, and flip this card over. Once on his backside, he has his activate main / battle once per turn. If your life is at 5 or less, and you choose one card underneath this card and place it in its owner's drop area, you can choose one of the following effects. For the first effect, if you control a Universe 7 card in play, draw one card. Then look at your opponent's hand and choose up to one of their extra cards or battle cards with 35k power or less in their hand and place it in their drop area. Really cool effect when you're trying to push for game in the next turn, or if you're trying to remove any kind of negates that your opponent has while you're going for your SCR attack. And then he has a second effect, which is choose up to 3 multicolor extra cards with different names in your drop area and or warp and add them to your hand. It's very important that this effect does not say red-blue multicolor extra cards, but strictly just multicolor extra cards, for that will affect what we will do post-ban list. So moving into the deck, we have 4 copies of Tournament Power Arena. This card is a field spell, absolute must play at 4 in this deck. It has a permanent. If your leader card is a Universe 7 card, which we are, negate the energy exhaust of all of your red-blue multicolor extra cards in all areas. That means all of your red-blue cards now come in as check lands once Tournament Power Arena is live. You desperately need this card turn 1, and if you can't find it turn 1, the later the game gets and you still don't have this card, the worse the game gets. So, albeit, you do want to mulligan all 6 cards in your hand to try to find this card. Then it has its activate main if your leader card is a Universe 7 card, and you switch this card to rest mode. You can look at up to 3 cards from the top of your deck. Then you may place them back on top of the deck or at the bottom of the deck in any order. It is important that it does say look up to 3. You do want to look at the cards one at a time, because if by the second card, by the time you look at your second card off the top 3, if both the first card and the second card are really terrible for the game plan you're trying to achieve, so let's say they're top or like top Beerus, something you just absolutely do not need, like top Violent Rays in an unnecessary matchup for those cards. Instead of looking at the third card and forcing yourself to play through the top 3 cards, it's going to be higher chance for you to succeed if you just shove the first 2 cards that you found that were not good to the bottom of your deck and then just play through the third card. In many ways, this is like playing through one bad, or instead of having to play through 2 bad turns, you only have to play through 1 bad turn. Of course, there's always a chance that all 3 cards are bad, but the likeliness of that in a deck that's geared towards being effective in every situation is much more unlikely. We do play a full suite of Senzu Beans. The ability to untap mana in this deck is what you live and die by. Having extra 5k combo power is huge. Also lets you make some incredible plays in slow matchups versus your more controlled decks. You're going to rely on Apex of Power in those decks, so having access to multiple beans will allow you to use Apex to shut off all your opponent's cards and finish the game from there. And then for our last of our mono blue cards, we play 4 copies of Dimension Magic. Being that we play 2 colors, one of them is a good color and the other one is red, we do choose to elect to use our good colors Sparking Negate. This Sparking Negate will allow us to negate the attack and untap up to 2 of our blue energy. This is incredibly relevant because we can use the Sparking Negate to untap 2 of our multicolored blue energy to allow for more Invoker style plays. I could not consider replacing this negate at all. However, have been some formats where I did consider running After Image Technique as extra sparking negates when aggro decks were too powerful. Moving on to our red-blue spells, we play 1 copy of Combination Attack. Combination Attack is just a sneaky way we deal with battle cards. It has this Activate Battle. You can choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards with an energy cost of 5 or less, return them to its owner's hand, then choose up to one of your red or blue energy and switch it to active mode. So under the Invoker effect, which allows you to play your red-blue extra cards for 1 red-blue energy, this card is effectively a free energy cost card, returning any 5-drop or less. It's important that it says return to its owner's hand. In so many matchups, your opponent can take your Topo, especially in the Meki Kabura matchup or any Heroine's lineage, since Topo is probably the only battle card you play that can really be taken. So in those matchups when they make that mistake, you can combination attack your Topo back to your hand and use it again for the next turn. Also lets you deal with cards like Demigra super early or Bardock Ape super early. Then we move on to our We're in this together. We play 1 copy of it. It has this activate main that we rarely use. If your leader card is a Universe 7, which we are, choose all of your opponent's battle cards with 25k power or less and KO them, which is a really cool board wipe for 1 energy under Invoker. We have the second activate main, which is what we really use this card for. For 1 red, if your leader is a Universe 7 card, add this card from your drop area to your hand. Because of this card, this deck is impossible to lose with versus hand control decks. Hand control decks will continuously try to strip cards out of your hand, and you just keep looping this card back to your hand, making it so that every time you can pay energy, you just reuse the card, and hand control just falls behind because they're spending energy trying to rip cards out of your hand, and you're just spending energy putting it back in. So ultimately, your game plan is accelerating, and their game plan is failing. And then we go to what I call our fetch spells. We play 4 copies of Catastrophic Blow. Catastrophic Blow has this activate main. If you have a red-blue multicolor extra card, or if you have a red-blue multicolor Son Goku card in play, or there are no battle cards in play, you deal 1 damage to your opponent. This allows for some ridiculous combos in this deck in this current format before the next ban list, where you can deal upwards of 14 damage in 1 turn. Next format, we will be strictly reserved to only deal 5 damage at most and burn damage in 1 turn through just Catastrophic Blow. I'm going to set these cards aside for when we talk about the post format changes, and we'll go back to them. Next, we have 4 copies of Emperor's Death Beam. Emperor's Death Beam has an activate main or battle. It's important that you have the ability to activate main in case you need to get that 5th extra card into the drop for Apex of Power on turn 5. It's choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier, and it gets minus 30k power for the duration of the turn. That's an incredible boost to this card. Because it gets minus 30k power for the duration of the turn, Piccolo Jr. does die under Emperor's Death Beam after it leaves that battle. Also because this is an activate battle, most of the time you can't die by battle cards in this game as long as this card is live. And we're going to set these aside before we talk about the second activate main under Catastrophic Blow. We also play a full suite of Royal Condemnations. Condemnations has its activate, or counterplay, my apologies. Says if your leader card is a Universe 7, of course, which we are, if the battle card being played has an energy cost of 8 or less, which covers almost every card in the game, it only misses out on a few SCRs and Food, Shrouded in Mystery, I believe. Maybe there's like a Whis that gets out of range of it, but other than that, it hits almost every other battle card in the game that doesn't have Deflect. Anyway, if the battle card being played has a energy cost of 8 or less, it is sent to the bottom of the deck instead of being played, making it so that you're free from stuff like Frieza Charismatic Villain or Draw Apes, or rather Bardock Apes later in the game. All 3 of these last aforementioned cards have this activate main at the bottom of their card that says activate main. You may warp this card from your drop area. Look at the top card of your deck. If that card is a multicolor extra card, you may reveal it to your opponent and add it to your hand. It's incredibly important that it says multicolor and not red-blue multicolor extra card once again, because post-ban list we are going to dip into yellow to try some things. So like I said, I'm going to leave the catastrophic blows out and move on from the rest of the deck. Rounding out our red blue multicolor extra cards, we have our red blue multicolor negates. We have Instinctive Reprisal at 1 copy. It has this counter attack for 2 energy, negate the attack, then choose up to 2 of your opponent's battle cards. Choose up to your opponent's 2 of your opponent's leader cards or battle cards, my apologies. And they get minus 10k power for the duration of the turn. This is incredibly important versus these black Saiyan only decks, as they can play, or rather just black Saiyan decks in general, because they can play the Son Goku and Vegeta True Fighting Spirits, which are good counters to your deck. However, Instinctive Reprisal allows you to deal with both of them without actually having to lose as much as you would if you would have to play Cooler and Beerus Super Combo to deal with them. Plus, this gets around their activate or their auto when they attack, so it will kill them before they get to do their auto. They will still get to do their auto, but you will have removed them. Whereas if you try to rely on Cooler and Beerus, they will get to do their auto and then be out of range of Cooler. Something to consider. Also, because it is a multicolor extra card, you can cycle it back with the backside of your leader's effect to grab an extra negate should you need it. We do play 2 copies of Sleepy Boy Technique. Sleepy Boy Technique is an incredibly powerful card. It says counter attack, negate the attack, draw 2 cards, then choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards and return it to their hand, or return it to the owner's hand. This is absolutely insane as 1 mana under the effect of Invoker. However, even at 3 mana, it is a well-costed card. Technically, if you would think about it, 1 mana is used to negate the attack. 1 mana is used to draw a card. A third mana is used to draw the second card, and then for a invisible 4th mana that you didn't have to pay, you can return 1 battle card to your opponent's hand. And due to that fact, this card is absurdly powerful. We only play 2 copies of it in this format because we are in a decently fast format and we can only resolve Sleepy Boy once or twice in a game. And should we need to resolve it a 3rd time, our leader can pick it up. However, as we move into the next format where we might have to survive past turn 5, and we might have to Sleepy Boy again on turn 5, then we might play a 3rd copy of Sleepy Boy to have it for then. For our defensive floodgates, as people start calling them now, and our hard negates or turn enders, we currently play 3 copies of Violent Rays. Violent Rays is a counter attack if your leader card is red, which we are. Negate the attack, then you may choose 1 card in your hand and discard it, and if you do, you can choose 1. Your opponent cannot attack with either battle cards or unison cards of the one of them is battle cards, the other one is unison cards. Either way, whichever one you pick, if that target has 20k power or more, they cannot attack for the rest of the turn. This, of course, lets us shut out decks like Dark Broly. And even today in like new VJax and Kai, when they're playing 20ks and up, we're able to use Violent Rays to shut them down. Mecha Frieza themselves even have a bunch of 20ks that they can use between the apes. Sometimes they play the Trunks Unison, which this will affect because it has dual attack. And of course, on the other side of things, for the decks who do not play big dudes, instead they go wide, we play 3 copies of Topo Righteous Aid. For those who don't know yet, Topo's Righteous Aid is counterattack, choose 1 card in your hand, and place it in your drop area. This is actually not a cost for the counterattack, I found out. So if your opponent when you decide to activate Topo and your opponent uses the yellow cooler, you don't actually have to discard the card. And then if you get to resolve this full counterattack, like I said, you discard 1 card from your hand to the drop area and play this card. When this card is played, it gets this really cool auto. If it's your opponent's turn, when you play this card, for the rest of your opponent's turn, they cannot attack unless they discard 2 cards. This places a heavy tax on these wide decks who already committed their hands to the field just to be able to set up all these attackers. So Topo oftentimes ends the turn for them. Moving into our battle card package, we're going to start with one of our popular finishers. We have 4 copies of Son Goku Rival Seeker. Son Goku Rival Seeker is probably the most busted card in the game. And if you were to try to beat this deck, this is the card I would side against. Son Goku Rival Seeker has this permanent. If you have a red-blue multicolor extra card in your drop area, you reduce the combo cost of this card in your hand by 1, meaning this becomes a 0 for 10k in your hand almost always while you're playing this deck. Then it has this activate main once per turn as a cost if you have 5 or more energy and you add 2 red-blue multicolor extra cards from your warp to your hand. That is the cost. Then you can choose up to 1 red-blue multicolor Son Goku, up to 1 red-blue multicolor Son Goku card with an energy cost of 6 in your hand and play it on top of this card. Of course, this lets you evolve into the energy explosion, which we'll be going after over. It's important that that cost from adding 2 multicolor extra cards to your hand does not state differently named multicolor extra cards. So for the rest of this format, we generally add 2 catastrophic blows when we use it to kill our opponents. And of course, every copy of Son Goku Rival Seeker adds another 2 damage to the combo. However, Son Goku Rival Seeker paired with Ultra Instinct Son Goku Energy Explosion is what makes the deck so deadly and deserving of this errata to make the deck fair. Ultra Instinct Son Goku Energy Explosion is the first card that I've revealed on this deck profile that has Invoker on it, so I'll quickly go over in the Invoker keyword skill. The Invoker keyword skill is a skill that does not activate, rather is a permanent on the card that allows you to, instead of paying the full cost for a red-blue multicolor extra card, you can just pay with one red-blue mana. That's a big deal. And then it has, so the rest of this card has this cool auto. When this card is played, you choose 3 of your energy and place it in the drop area. And then you can choose 3 cards in your drop area and place them back in your energy, negating those cards' energy exhaust. This would normally not matter for this deck because we do play Turn of a Power Arena, which would negate their energy exhaust anyways. But however, if we do switch to other colors in this game, for this deck, this skill to negate their energy exhaust will be relevant. And it has this auto once per turn. When one of your cards deals damage to your opponent, deal 1 additional damage to your opponent. This is really cool. It turns any of your battle cards into a double striker for the first attack. It turns your catastrophic blow into 1 extra damage per energy explosion that you choose to play out during that turn, which will allow you to do ridiculous amounts of damage in 1 turn. Moving into our super combos, we play 4 copies of Beerus Divine Obliterator. Beerus Divine Obliterator is undoubtedly the best super combo for this deck. It is both a red and a blue multicolored battle card, which means we can charge it to set up red-blue Invoker plays. It has a Universe 7 tag, which means we can cast it to use our Activate main first choice on our leader. And it has this really cool auto if your leader card is red and or blue, which we are, or red or blue, which we are both. And it's during your opponent's turn. When you combo this card from your hand, you can choose up to one of your red-blue, specifically multicolor extra card or energy cards, and switch it to active mode. So this lets you get untap out of some pretty terrible situations. Sometimes you have to tap 3 for Sleepy Boy to draw 2 cards, then use your Beer's Divine. Then you can use your Beer's Divine Obliterator to tap out of it. So that is a really cool interaction for the card. Additionally, this card, the fact that you can cast it for 2 is really convenient on turn 5 for the rest of this format because you can tap it for 2 if you have no battle cards. You can tap 2 to play it out. Use your backsides effect to take a card out of your opponent's hand to take out any answers they have for Rival Seeker. Then use your remaining 3 energy to slam Rival Seeker down in the field and go into Energy Explosion, resetting those 3 energy, allowing you to go into at least a 4 damage burn combo as long as you have access to those catastrophic blows. Going into the next format, this card, we might split this into 2 Divine Beerus Obliterators and 2 Draw Super Combos. The Draw Super Combos remain a mystery for now. They could be the Universe 7 Draw Super Combos, or they could just be like the Vegeta GT Super Combo that's in blue. We do want to charge Mono Blue turn 1, so we won't be able to use the Raditz Super Combo. Um, Digging further into our battle cards, we play 3 copies of Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta Inspired Technique. Inspired Technique gives us some tools. It gives us a solid turn 3 play versus slow decks and a solid turn 4 play versus fast decks. If we're on the play, this card is almost always correct on turn 3 because your opponent would have, if they were to remove it, almost every card that removes barrier battle cards take 3 mana, so your opponent would have to spend their entire turn removing your Vegeta, and that in itself is worth the 3 mana for playing this card. This card only has keyword skills on it. It has barrier and deflect, so he's going to stick around for a long time. He is a 19k, so even if you do attack with him, 15ks do have to combo up, and your opponent does have the negative just to try to get rid of him. And then, of course, he has the Invoker keyword skill, which I described earlier on the Energy Explosion. Vegeta, I've said this many times in my videos, we only play 3 copies of him because he's terrible after the first time you play him. He's terrible for the first 2 to 3 turns of the game. So you really only want to resolve one of them. He is one of your best charges that you can see. Sometimes we're really only playing him to gain access to the Thoughtseize ability and to bait your opponent into spending some energy for their offensive turn in removing this card. During this format, a lot of people sided cards that deal with Vegeta, and as a result, I sided him out a lot, especially during my event this weekend. Both Dark Broly players I played the Gogeta 16k Gogeta Black Gogeta card that can remove a card with barrier, so I just sided out my Vegeta completely versus them. The Cell Surge deck, they play Demigra. Actually, any green deck plays the Demigra Unison, which can kill Vegeta, so I just side him out versus those decks. The Mecha Frieza's decks play Final Flash, so if you're going second, like if you're on the draw versus Mecha Frieza, there's no value to having Vegeta. You just side him out completely. A lot of the times, this strategy is really effective because it leaves your opponent with dead cards in the deck. And I forgot to mention, the Soul Striker deck sided Son Goku in close quarters, which is a 2-mana answer to Vegeta, so of course I just sided him out. And there was no value to keeping this card versus those decks. And this deck functions just fine without Invoker for the first 4 or 5 turns for the game. So you can just leave it as it is. The Invoker Hero skill, of course, lets you play Sleepy Boy for 1, which is really what you're doing with this card. It just lets you use Sleepy Boy and Death Beam a little more effectively. Otherwise, the rest of the negates and cards you're using in the deck are just mono red and mono blue, so it doesn't really matter. And of course, for our SCR, we're playing Son Goku and Vegeta Apex of Power. Apex of Power has Invoker, which is really convenient, and also has Victory Strike, meaning if it sneezes on your opponent during the battle step and successfully lands those germs on them, it will take out your opponent. It has this Activate main for 2 red, 3 blue. If your leader is a Universe 7 card and you have 5 or more red-blue multicolor extra cards in your drop area, negate the skills of every card in your opponent's deck, hand, and field, all areas, um, except for their extra cards, until the end of their next turn. So that includes leaders, unisons, and battle cards. And then you play this card from your hand, which makes it a really powerful turn, like let's tool to buy yourself a turn. Most of the time, you're not killing your opponents with Victor Strike. In the rare occasions that you do kill your opponents with the Victory Strike attack is because your opponent was terribly unprepared for this card, and they didn't keep 2 or 3 negates in their hand going to turn 5. But most of the time, you're going to use this card to shut off your opponent's responses and or their next turn, and then go into your burn combo to kill them from there, which has a lot of people asking, how do you win the game into the next format? So we're going to go over that after the side deck. So that is the main deck. It's always been 50 cards only. I would never play more. I can't play less, but I would if I could. And that's for consistency's sake. Going to the side deck, we have an extra copy of We're in This Together to ensure that we definitely do not lose versus hand control. With 2 copies of this card, we are definitely bound to find it somewhere by turn at least 3. If we haven't found it in the first 2 turns, we will find it by 3 with how fast we can fly through our deck with Tournament Power Arena. We don't really side this in versus fast decks that go wide. You would think we would because it's a Raigeki effect. However, if those decks are so fast, you don't really have time to slam Vegeta and then pay another energy to wipe out their field. So it's really just here to beat hand control. We play another copy of Instinctive Reprisal to beat out those decks that do play those Black Saiyan decks that do play those True Fighting Spirit cards. A copy of this lets you get out of those holes where they slam multiple True Fighting Spirits and hope to wane out your resources, but you will just out-resource them by paying. If it's just the Vegetas, you just pay 2 energy or 1 energy and use this to kill both Vegetas. If it's a Goku, you can pay this into whatever cards you choose, which are tops or whatever, to kill both Gokus, once again being more effective than actually having to use Cooler. It also is another multicolor extra card in our side deck in case we actually need to be the deck that has to go faster than our opponent. This is not a scenario that exists in today's game. Maybe versus Bulma, we would side this in to go faster, just because so we fill our deck with more red-blue multicolor extra cards, or more multicolor extra cards to cycle through our deck faster. But that's not really relevant today. But something just to consider in those rogue matchups where people are trying to play super slow decks and you're trying to outpace your opponent in draws. We play another copy of Topo Wretch's Aid for wide decks. Pretty much for the wide decks, we side out Violent Rays, bring in Topo and a couple other extra cards. And then for the tall decks, we side out our Topos and bring in Violent Rays and a couple extra cards. We play 2 copies of Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken Son Goku Concentrated Destruction. Probably the card with the longest name in this game and the worst card to write on any deck list. This card we use for the Activate main 2 red energy. If your leader card is red and you choose to place this card from your hand in the drop area, you can choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring bear, and neg 25k from it. This is strictly to kill Son Goku Absolute Annihilator from the yellow strategy, which makes it very difficult to play our deck. However, moving forward, I probably will play in close quarters instead so we can use the 2 energy on our opponent's turn to kill Absolute Annihilator and go into our turn with energy available, which is just way more effective than spending this energy. It also has an auto when this card is played, paired with its deflectability, where you can choose all your opponent's battle cards with a power of 20k or less and KO them all. This becomes less and less useful as the only wide decks we would use this against are Piccolo, Launch, and King Vegeta. However, versus those decks, we can just use Unending Awakening and be higher than their actual combo power. So we will definitely probably take these out for in close quarters in the future. We play 2 copies of Broly Crown of Retribution for those blue-yellow decks that are relying on Zamasu to beat out your turn 5 play. It's also there for Baby to take out God Sealing Techniques, and for those same blue decks to take out God Sealing Technique, because that's the only card that can really stop this deck from killing them, or rather stall this deck from killing them. Broly Crown of Retribution is almost always met with a Zamasu if they're playing the Zamasu, meaning they have to tap down their energy, and now you can go into your kill turn for free, or you can look at their hand and take out the God Sealing that was sitting as their backup and then kill them through it. It also has a niche use in the mirror match if that ever comes up. We play 3 copies of Unending Awakenings for the King Piccolo and King Vegeta, and any really like 15k based matchups. So Meki Cabra also this comes in for. It's just a simple negate the attack, counter attack, negate the attack, then choose up to one of your Red Saiyan leader cards, and it gains 5k power for the rest of the turn. So it's like activating a beam, but being able to actually negate the attack. It's also just a 1 mana hard negate in case you find yourself in a matchup like Reboot Han, which won't exist post format, but in a matchup where they just push you way too hard and you need to find cheaper negates. So this is just a great card for that. We play 2 copies of Beerus Ball as our respect call for green. Beerus Ball is pretty much our only way to beat green because we can't keep Invoker Vegeta on the field to set up for Royal Condemnation versus Charismatic Villain, so we can use this versus Charismatic Villain instead. They activate Charismatic, you respond with Beerus Ball. As long as you're at 4 life or less. I did make a mistake in my second game versus Cell Surge Hand Control, and I had myself at 5 life when I went for my kill turn, so I had to pass turn and take another life on his turn to be able to set myself up to kill him. Luckily, he didn't discover my game plan. I went to my turn 6 with Beerus Ball up and just burned him to death. Um, this card can be sparking because we are charging multicolor energy. That's really important so it doesn't eat up one of your precious energy when you're going for a kill turn. And as of late, black decks have been siding the black 3-drop Dabura, which also snipes out Rival Seeker, so you can respond with Beerus Ball to that card as well to make sure that card doesn't interrupt your plans. And finally, for the end of our set deck, we play 2 copies of Burning Slash. Burning Slash is a counter attack, negate the attack. This card, it has this permanent. This card's skill can't be negated in any area. In set 14, this card will be replaced with the blue version of this card, just because we can charge it for our first turn. But this is really just our answer to King Cold's Unison Triple Strike Majin Buu attack that they always rely on to finish us off before turn 5. It also gives us an answer to the Cooler and Yellow and Baby's final attacks, although we wouldn't really side it in versus those other decks unless we had literally nothing else to side. Once this card does become mono blue, it is going to be an easier side because we can just charge it and it is an extra card that we can always cycle and or awaken with. But for now, these 2 cards are just the respect side cards versus King Cold. That is the entire 65, well 66 including the leader list that I played for the G series. So from this point on in the video, I'm just going to be talking about things I will change in the deck or will consider changing moving forward in the deck. For those who don't know yet, Bandai has issued out an errata coming into place on August 6th, which will place a limit 1 keyword skill on Catastrophic Blow, which will mean you can only activate 1 Catastrophic Blow a turn. This is not backbreaking for the deck, as you do reset back to 5 energy when you play Energy Explosion. So activating 1 Catastrophic Blow for 2 damage and then passing turn with 4 energy up and double Invoker on your field is really easy to defend for the next turn and activate a second Catastrophic Blow. Granted, it does give your opponent an extra chance to kill you on turn 6, but given the amount of floodgates that this deck plays and how much slow the format is going to be, I imagine this deck will be healthier going into turn 5 than it was this format. So discussing some cards and some changes we might make with the deck, I have a 4th copy of Energy Explosion here. Because Energy Explosion resets all 3 energy that you play that you spent on Rival Seeker, you can set up up to 4 energy explosions onto your field before you use your Catastrophic Blow, meaning your first Catastrophic Blow will deal 5 damage and one-shot your opponent still. A lot of people probably watching this video at home are like, well, how are you going to get those 8 cards in your hand? Those 8 specific cards. We're probably going to play a card called We Are Universe 7, which will let you add any multicolor universe, or actually any Universe 7 battle card from your drop to your hand when you're ready to go for the kill turn. So there's some cool combos where you can charge this early game, send it to the drop with the first energy explosions effect when you're resetting energy, and then use We Are Universe 7 to pick it back up to make another one, and as many as you need to burn your opponent out in 1 turn. So getting burned to death for 5 is definitely not finished in this game. But it definitely makes it a lot harder, a lot less consistent, and if you're limping across the finish line, burning won't be your go-to option anymore. Because burning isn't our go-to option anymore, we are going to include or try to include one copy or two of Son Goku Instinct Surpass. Instinct Surpass hasn't been played in a while. It's from the Dash Pack. It's a triple strike deflect card. Has its activate main, choose two red blue multicolor extra cards in your hand and or drop air and warp then, and you get to stand this battle card back up and reduce your opponent's leader's power by 5k for the turn. So theoretically, with the amount of red blue multicolor extra cards we play in this deck, and with our combined with our leader effect and rival seeker, we could attack with this card 10 times in a turn. Being a triple strike 35k and up to 10 attacks means it can definitely still one-shot your opponent from 8 life if they're ill-prepared. Of course, negates do affect this guy. Specifically, negates like Mafuba and Petrification are his deadliest enemies. Maybe Time Magic as well. Otherwise, he is going to go in for beats. It does give us another way to finish out the game. He has the flex, so he's strong into blue decks that rely on like God Sealing to beat out your kill turns. Rival Seeker can still go into him, giving us an alternative win con moving forward. However, this is obviously weaker than today's version of the deck because this is an interactable card, whereas the burn is not. Being that the catastrophic blow is going to be limited to one, we might cut this card down to 3 or 2, just because we don't really want to see multiple copies anymore. Even using Rival Seeker in our leader effect, we won't be picking up this card anymore. We'll be picking up more defensive copies. So we can add in a new cycle card that was released in a recent draft box. It's Explosive Demon Wave. This has a counter ability if your leader card is red and you choose one red card in your hand and discard it. So it's a pretty hefty cost because you're going to have to invoke it for 1 energy and then discard another card from your hand. You can negate the battle card's counter attack skill, then switch up to one of your blue energy to active mode at the end of the turn. Obviously, you're not going to be switching up an energy to active mode because you're going to be using this card in combination with this card to end games. This card will let you shut out a bunch of really powerful counterattacks that this game has to offer, from green's Kakunsa to red's Topo to blue Sun Gohan or even Baby Hachiyak. This will let you get around that card. And just like the rest of the fetch spells in this deck, this will let you look at the top card and check for a multicolor card and add it to your hand. So it won't really erode the deck's consistency by adding it in over the place of catastrophic blows. It's just as useless early game before your kill turns. So, but it gives you access to another tool to really close out these games. Um, and then before I move on to my more techie choices that I might look forward into the deck, in addition to all of these cards, like this card and Apex being still powerful next set, some cards that you consider trying are like Fu Shrouded Mystery. There's some concepts where you can resolve a Apex of Power on T5 or a Son Goku Instinct Surpass on T5. Obviously, with Apex, you would try to attack to blow out and negate. In Instincts, you can just hold it up, and then on turn 6, you can just play Fu Shrouded Mystery. Close out all of their negates and anything they can respond with, and then just finish them out with one of these that's remaining on the field. Apex is really difficult to remove when you play it on 5 because your opponent can't actually play any cards. So you can just, other than extra cards, they would have to play something like Max Power Kamehameha to really remove this card from the battle area. So you can just use your leader's effect and rip it out of their hand. And they can't really draw into it next turn other than draw for turn because their leaders are shut off. So Fu Shrouded Mystery being a cool way to close out the game on turn 6 is actually a really, really good backup to this deck, especially if we can force the game to go even slower to a turn 6. Maybe 4 copies of Topo or 4 copies of Violent Rays in the main. So moving away from the obvious changes to this deck, we're going to dive into the blue-yellow territory. If the game does tend to be super slow and Blue Baby is really popular, well, one of the cards in Blue Babies that we can definitely lose to is Fu Shrouded Mystery. The Demigra Overrealm is really good for black, or the Demigra SCR is really good in black that beats this deck because it tears apart all of our win cons. And even Baby Ape Golden Avenger does beat this deck from time to time after turn 5. So we can splash in this Frost Deadly Poison. It lets us negate those cards, put them in rest, draw a card, and most of the time we're under 3 life, so we can just untap the mana. Most importantly, it is a multicolor extra card, so both our leader and all of our fetch spells interact with this card. In a perfect world, if we would be playing this card, we would charge top on turn 1 and we charge Frost Deadly on turn 2. Since we're not doing anything with our energy on those first 2 turns, we can just defend with D-Magic's Beans or just cycling cards. And then on turn 3 and onward, we'd start charging multicolor cards, giving us access to the yellow energy. For the Frost Deadly Poison. It really only has 1 yellow pip. And because we are going to consider playing yellow energy, we're also going to consider playing Almighty Resistance. As I mentioned earlier, the only weaknesses to our multi-attacking strategy are Mafubo and Petrification, Time Magic. Those can everything else we can just restand it and attack again. And then of course we have the Explosive Demon Wave to beat out really turn enders like Topo and stuff. So we really just needed an answer to um, like Petrification, Bafuba, and Time Magic. So Almighty Resistance gives us a great answer to that. Once again, it is a multicolor extra card, so it interacts with our fetch spells and our leader. We can pick it up when we're ready to go for the kill. It costs 2 mana, which is perfectly fits with the Rival Seeker finish. On turn 5, we can spend 3 for Rival Seeker, bring up the Instinct Surpass, and leave 2 mana up for the Almighty Resistance. Obviously, you have to leave up your yellow mana and a red mana, which is really easy because Rival Seeker takes blue, blue, red, or just blue, red, blank, I'm pretty sure. Um, yeah, it's blue, red, blank. So like you can easily just leave a red, yellow going into your going for your attacks. It has this counter ability. It's just a cooler like for red, yellow that costs 2. If your leader card is red, which we are, and you choose one yellow card in your hand and place it in your drop area, negate the counter attack skill. This you would think is pretty difficult for this deck to do, but if we play multiple copies of Almighty and Cold Bloodlust, for the cards we pick up, it can just be Almighty, Bloodlust, so the yellow card for the counter that we have, and then whatever other extra card we want to discard for our Instinct Surpass, which is a really cool concept for the deck. So these are some things I'm going to be trying going to the next format. The strength of Invoker next format will rely on how fast the next format will be and how prevalent Red Broly will be in the format. If Red Broly is really prevalent, this deck definitely cannot survive next format as its kill turn got pushed even further back. However, it could deal 2 burn damage to Red Broly, so that might not even be true. So we'll see. But that's the end of my probably the last Invoker deck profile of this current format. I hope you guys enjoyed. Shout out to all my friends that travel with me and support me, and all the people I get to play with and meet at all these events. I hope to meet some of you that I've never met before. This game has just been so great. Shout out to Team Fellow XPPG for creating such a great environment to play in, and I'll catch y'all next time.